Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Irene Anthony. I'm a senior international student and scholar coordinator, and I'm going to introduce my colleague, Madison, who we are going to present together today. Madison, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Again, she said I'm Madison McHale. I'm one of the International Student Scholar Advisors here at ISSS, and we appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
So today's presentation is, as it says, on-campus employment and social security numbers. So we can have the next slide. All right. So, really the important thing to remember about on-campus employment is if you have any questions about whether it qualifies for on-campus employment, if it's volunteer and you're not sure if that qualifies as employment, feel free to reach out to us to ask those questions. Always reach out to your ISSS advisor. Remember, your ISSS advisor can be found in your IPEN record. But please feel free. Don't rely on friends or your supervisor or professor to answer any employment questions. We are your resource for that. So make sure you do that. Okay, so what is on-campus employment? Well, as it says on the slide, it's for the benefit of Penn. And you're also going to, in the position, you are going to receive money from the Penn payroll. You will be on the payroll, or you're going to be compensated in some case, such as you'll have your room and board paid, such as fellowships or assistantships. Sometimes your tuition is covered. That is still classified as on-campus employment. The third caret mentions has to take place on Penn premises, so on the campus or the vet school, someplace that is premises. And also, very important to remember that while school is in session, you are limited to 20 hours maximum of employment per week for on-campus employment. During the holidays or summer holidays, summer break, you can work more than 20 hours, but while school is in session, please remember to limit your activities to 20 hours per week. And as the last bullet mentions, in general, all of these items have to be met. But if there are some nuances to things and you're not sure, again, make sure you're reaching out to our office for further clarification. All right, so there's a little bit of a split as far as what is required for on-campus employment authorization. We have those of you who are F1 students and versus the J1 students. So for F1 students, they can work on campus as long as they have been issued an I-20 from our office and they are maintaining their full-time enrollment in their studies. So you would use the I-20 to be I-9 at onboard at Penn. And then you, again, are limited to 20 hours per week while school is in session. For J1 students, it's a little bit different. There are a little bit more loopholes or whatever you have to go through. Hoops, that is, that you have to jump through. There is on our website an authorization, an on-campus employment authorization form that would need to be completed by the person that is employing you, the hiring department at Penn. There is an IPEN notification that you would then upload that form to request our authorization, our office's authorization or sign off on that form. And then with that form, you can use that to be onboarded at Onboard at Penn for the I-9 purposes. For J1s, if you are in an assistantship, fellowship, any employment, just remember the authorization that is offered by our office is only valid for 12 months at a time. So each year, if you're in an assistantship, fellowship, you would have to come back and request an extension of that employment authorization from our office each time. So again, just to sum up, F1 students, you have your I-20, you can have your position 20 hours a week, go to onboard at Penn to do your I-9. J1 students, you have to first go through our office to get a form completed and signed by us, and then we can issue that, and then you can use that to go to onboard at Penn. All right, so here we have a case study. So, would this qualify for on campus or not? So, a student works as a teaching assistant for a professor who teaches at Wharton. The professor is planning to teach a course at Columbia University during the summer and asks the student if he will be available to continue working for him during the summer. He would like the student to serve as a teaching assistant for the course at Columbia. Now, would you think this opportunity is allowed under on campus employment for an F or J1 student? What do you think, Madison?
I'm gonna say no.
Okay,
Do you want me to say why?
sure.
Okay. So the answer is no. Students should check with ISSS to see if they can request special permission or need to apply for F1 or J1 work authorization. Because as Irene mentioned before in the previous slides about, on-campus work and it being on Penn premises, this would be something we would be looking at what's called off-campus work, and that would require authorization in order for it to comply with your visa regulations. Yeah,
Okay. And I think, Mike, if you hit the enter, it'll give the answer to that question. Should. There we go.
there we go.
There we go. All right. So thank you, Madison. So just some examples again for what qualifies as on-campus employment. As I mentioned, teaching assistants, research assistants, graduate assistant positions within the Penn academic department, the fellowships, working at the libraries on campus, um, and then Penn campus recreation, such as the gym, the fitness center, um, any association or entity that is considered a Penn agency, student agency, such as Williams Cafe, Daily Pennsylvanian, anything where you're getting a paycheck from Penn, essentially. But again, if you any doubts, reach out to our office first. And just some examples of what doesn't qualify as on-campus employment. So a good example is the second one, the Wistar Institute, because technically that does kind of sit on the Penn campus, but it's a separate entity. It is not, it's not related to Penn at all. Same thing with the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. All those items might be considered affiliated or somehow associated with Penn, but they're not considered on campus, nor are they considered something that you could get paid from by the Penn payroll. Okay, so again, if you have opportunities at any of these places, it would necessitate a conversation with your ISSS advisor to see if there's something we would be able to provide as far as authorization to allow you to be employed there. But on the face of it, none of those items would qualify for on-campus employment. Okay. Um, Madison, is this where
So,
you pick up or is this still me? I
um,
don't know what slide number this is.
this is 7.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, it's
Uh,
okay. And I can chime in at any point for the last 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are some situations where something qualifies as on campus employment, but it is actually at an off campus location. And these are some of the examples the Netter Center, for GSE students, the PDAL program, CHOP. But again, very important that you speak to us first before entertaining or undertaking any activity at a location, even if it's in a volunteer capacity, you would still need to consult with us first to see if it's something that you're authorized to do. Okay, and then I'm going to, I guess, pass the rein. No, this is still me. Sorry. So
It's
what
Monday.
it's
It's fine.
Monday. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what qualifies for off-campus employment. So off-campus employment would require authorization from our office. So for F1s, that would include curricular practical training or optional practical training. Again, this is something that you would need to work with your individual advisor about, ISSS advisor about, to make sure it's something that the position was something that we would be able to support either for CPT or OPT. Likewise, for J1s, you would have to be authorized by our office for what's called academic training. So F1 CPT or OPT is similar to a J1 academic training. It's kind of the same thing, but each visa classification has a different word for it. But again, all avenues would require authorization from our office first. And as the last bullet mentions, the came back, there we go. Anything that's off-campus related for which you're going to do curricular practical training, optional practical training, academic training for J's has to be related to your degree, your student in your field of study. So it's not like you can go work part-time at Macy's to earn extra money. That would not be a possibility. So just remember it has to align closely with your degree and your field of study. Okay,
Okay, now it's
now
me.
now I pass the reins to Madison.
So, as it says here, please provide a job offer or posting and consult with your ISSS advisor prior to accepting employment if you're uncertain about whether your position qualifies as on-campus employment. So, I will add a couple things to this as well. I know when we were preparing for this, I know Irene and I talked about this. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the saying, asking for permission instead of forgiveness. I usually say that, immigration, it's about asking for permission. They do not recognize just asking for forgiveness. When in doubt, to reach out to us to double check with us. It is never a burden. We'd rather you do that. And to also add to that, because I have been getting this question quite a bit lately in advising, you do have your assigned advisor, ISSS advisor, but if in the event, you're trying to schedule an appointment or you want to go to a drop-in hour and maybe that assigned advisor's, appointment schedule doesn't work with your schedule or class schedule, you can meet with another advisor. It's not like you're boxed in. You can only meet with your ISSS advisor. There may be some things when you meet with another advisor, if it requires more follow-up, then they may recommend that you reach out further to your advisor, but did just want to make everyone aware of that as well, because I am getting that question a lot. All right, next slide. Okay, so I know as Irene said before, she mentioned onboard. So instruction for onboarding processing is available at the onboard website. I know even if you Google Penn or onboard at Penn, it should come up. And then it is the student's responsibility to keep your hiring department informed of any changes to their immigration status. Um, you are your own advocate. You cannot assume or expect that a hiring department at Penn is going to fully understand um, the responsibilities that you need to maintain as an F1 or J1 student. So it's really important, even for example, if, your work schedule comes out and you're noticing that it is going over, 20 hours a week, making them aware that you do have that limit in order to be compliant with your visa. And then specifically F1 students cannot continue working on campus after your I-20 end date. And then J1 students also cannot continue working on campus once the date on the J1 on-campus employment form has expired. If you are paid by Penn, and then you're on Penn payroll, you will need to have a social security number. The temporary number that is issued by Penn is not a social security number. Onboarding will, just to make sure that the rest of the hiring process can continue while waiting for you to obtain a social security number, they will internally assign a temporary number. But again, it is temporary. It's only supposed to be there until you are able to obtain a social security number. So that is a priority. You may work while the SSN application is pending, which is common because when you go to apply for Social Security, as we'll talk about in the next few slides, it's not something where you go to apply and same day you obtain your Social Security number. Yeah. All right, another case study, Irene.
Woohoo!
So, a student works at Penn Libraries during their senior year. Their supervisor asks if the student can continue working for the summer to help them with a special project. The student is planning to graduate in May, and their I-20 will expire on December 19th, 2024. Can the student keep working in the summer? Do you have any
Well,
thoughts, Irene?
I do have some thoughts. So even though you might have a document, an I-20 or a DS-2018 that goes far into the future, once you graduate, then that's when your employment authorization would end. And so you wouldn't have authorization beyond that date on the face of it. So you'd need to, well before you graduate, you're going to want to reach out to your ISS advisor and see if you've been offered a position for the summer, if it qualifies for something that we would be able to provide work authorization for, kind of post graduation employment authorization. But that would definitely, after you graduate, that does not qualify for on campus employment.
Correct.
Ding, ding, ding.
And this is just a summary of, exactly what she said. Um, and yet students should consult with ISSS, see if they can apply for another type of work authorization for employment, taking place after graduation. Please note that CPT, OPT, and AT, which is academic training, all require any work to be directly related to a student's major field of study. Okay, so Social Security. So F1 and J1 students are eligible to apply for a Social Security number if you have, upcoming or current employment. The documents that are required are first an SSN support letter from ISSS. And that is something that you can actually request through the iPen system. There is an e-form for that. So that is where you would request that. And then once that is processed and the letter is ready, we'll get an email with explaining like pickup instructions to set up a pickup appointment to retrieve that letter, since it says here, must have a wet signature on the letter. And that is a Social Security office requirement. Um, the next thing is on-campus employment form signed by hiring department, must have a wet signature as well. I know that somebody had asked a question of where to obtain that form. I know it's in the on-campus employment section on our website. I believe it may also be hyperlinked in the iPen e-form. I'm not quite sure, but I do know it is in the employment section on our website. Next is immigration documents. So whichever is relevant to you, your I-20, DS-2019, F and J visa, and your passport, if you have that, valid passport, I-94. The I-20 or DS-2019, because I know we are now sending them electronically, fortunately, they can be digitally signed, but students still need to print them out and sign it too. So similar to, reentry, going through customs, how you have to show a printed I-20 or DS-2019, Social Security wants to see that as well. Required documents may vary if applying based on off-campus work, but you can consult on our website. So on our Social Security section of our website, we do have specific checklists for relevant to each type of scenario. So we do have a section that's, tells you what you need for on-campus work or off-campus work. If you are, postgraduate and you are on OPT, we have a specific checklist for each scenario. And then the Social Security office, they are located in the Center City area. That is their information. It's also on our website as well. We also have business hours for them too. And I know now a new feature that they do have is that you can start the application process online now with Social Security. I confirmed I went through it this morning and it is there. You are still required at some point in the process, you will still have to physically go into the Social Security office. But in terms of the actual Social Security application, they do let you now file that online if you are obtaining a new Social Security number. And then after you submit, I believe it says, within 45 calendar days of submission, you need to find the time to come into their office to do final processing. Right, next slide. Okay. So this is on our, as I mentioned before, the Social Security section on our website. There is at the top of the web page, it does say, a link to a quick guide to the SSN process. I've looked through the guide. I think it's pretty nice in my opinion, both visual and written instructions. So hopefully that will help y'all as well if you are needing to apply for a Social Security number. So we understand that, even if you don't have employment or, a employment related reason that would warrant getting a social security number, we do know that there are matters where that is sometimes the initial request is to provide a social security number. So we do have some guides of how to handle the like examples of handling those matters without a social security number. So this is a screenshot from our website, the Social Security section on our website. If you scroll down to the very bottom, there is a tab to expand that is called Handling Practical Matters Without Social Security Number. And then each of these blue squares, if just you click on it, it will bring up a list of, possible alternatives to show to where you can, in these scenarios, technically get done what you need to have done without the social security number. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. Special consideration. See, it's still Monday, Irene. Um, an SSN is required for tax purposes if you are employed in the U.S. Um, and that's why it's very important, as I said, especially with on-campus work. I know that it can be very easy to, once you've been onboarded and hired, and especially that temporary, SSN is there. And I know there's so much going on also academically. It can be very easy to forget that you need to go apply for a social security number. But we've had scenarios before where a student, around tax time says, oh, I worked, on campus a few months ago. I don't work there anymore, but I never got a social security number. If you're no longer working for that employer, you cannot get a social security number. As we said, it only applies to future or current employment. So this is another main reason why you want to make sure that you're getting that social security number as soon as it's necessary to do so. ISSS, we are not tax experts. We legally cannot assist with tax guidance and filing taxes, but what we do have is that, at the beginning of each year, I know that we will send out tax information as well as access to a tax software that is specifically for international students, non-residents. And we do typically send that out, like I said, beginning of the year, specifically late February, early March. And then, please check with your hiring department for any additional requirements to start working. Um, yeah. And then when in doubt, as I said before, please check with ISSS first. Again, it's the ask for permission, not forgiveness. And again, as I said before, you do have your assigned advisor, but if, push comes to shove, it doesn't work, or maybe they don't have availability, or maybe you want an answer and they didn't email you back right away, you can always attend one of the drop-ins with another advisor. Virtual drop-ins, we always have at least one or more every day, Monday to Friday. I think right now, Mondays and Fridays, we have at least 2 to 3 different times. And then again, as well as, appointments you can schedule, even if you think that you possibly have a question that could be answered, maybe by the front desk, you can also always call our office during business hours. And then, our front desk, they will let you know if it's maybe a question that your advisor should be answering. So we try to be as accessible as possible. But you also, we won't come to you because we won't know that you have a question or issue. If you do need to take the initiative and ask our office. All right. So we do ask, if you could fill out at the end a survey. We are always every semester gathering, students and scholars' thoughts on our presentations and, what you guys are wanting to see for the future. So we would really appreciate if you had the time to give us that feedback. Um, and yeah, I guess now we can go to questions unless if you have something else to add,
No,
Irene.
I think nice job. Sums it up. So we can just like dive into the questions right now.
Yes.
So, first one, can international students participate in the research studies happening on campus, like Wharton Behavioral Lab or Computational Memory Lab, that pay on hourly basis, like $30 an hour for participation in the study?
So what I'm going to say with that, because that is kind of I mean, if you know more too on this, Irene, you can add, but at least from what I've seen through past cases, um, it really is going to depend on the scenario. If you're paid through, I know sometimes what's called like a clinic card. It really just depends. There is going to be a chance that it could be a no. But I think this is something, depending on the opportunity, like definitely consult with an ISSS advisor before, accepting a study or going into anything like that. Um, yeah, that's my take on it. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Irene.
Nope. And I concur with what Madison said. And remember, F's and J's are a little bit different. So, J's, we
Yes.
would need an on campus employment form to be completed by the Penn hiring department if that's how it's working. Okay. Um, J1 visa expires after a year, but J1 students can stay for as long as the DS 2019 is still valid. Does this also apply to employment at Penn? Do I have to renew my J1 visa even though my DS 2019 is still valid? Well, so you want to go back to what we said earlier. It's not how long your DS 2019 form is. It's like you have to be enrolled full time in classes. So you could have a DS 2019 that might not expire till December 31st, 2026, but you're graduating May of 2026. That's when your J1 status basically is over, regardless of whether you have a DS 2019 that has a future end date. Also, for the J1s, the employment authorization form is only valid for 12 months at a time. So when you are working with your department, you've got a assistantship or whatnot, and they're putting in the dates. It should be for a 12-month period of time because that's then what we're approving is for just that 12-month window period of time. So I'm not sure if I answered the question. Basically,
Um,
you're go ahead.
oh no, I was going to say just to add to that, it's in terms of if someone's asking that, when you're being hired, let's say you have the proper forms filled out, you're authorized to work and you're going through the hiring department and they're asking for paperwork. It's my understanding that whether it's an F1 or J1 visa, the visa in your passport, if that is expired in your passport, that is fine. They may still ask for it, but they are aware or should be aware, onboarding should be aware that it does not need to be valid. What matters is that either your I-20 or DS 2019 is valid at that time. And then, the nuance of what Irene just described as well.
Enrolled full time.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Who will give my work authorization form? So if you are specifically talking for J1s, there is a form on our website that would need to be completed by the hiring department at Penn, as well as the J1 student. And then that gets uploaded as a request in IPEN for on-campus employment. And that's when our office will review it. For F1s, there really isn't an on-campus authorization form. Instead, you would have your I-20 and you would use that to once you have your employment author or employment position, you would use that the I-20 and your documents to make an appointment at on board at Penn. So that's the difference. J1s need something from ISSS. F1s don't.
Yeah, and for that one to be more, if you are, because I know I answered this before, but if you are referring to getting that SSN letter, then you know that any form that's related to that you can find on campus employment. So really, just if applicable, whatever's applicable to you, if it does require a form, we do have links to those in the employment section on our website. Okay. I can take once I receive the support form, what to do with that form or precisely where I can submit the support form. So I'm assuming that's referring to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Irene, is that referring to then taking whatever form that is and putting it through iPen, that e-form?
The J1 on-campus work authorization form, if I'm not sure if that's what they mean by support form. Again, that's only for J1 students,
Hmm.
required only for J1 students.
Okay. Okay, Perlman Medical School is considered on campus, correct. Um, it should be for the most part. I usually just say, when in doubt, just double check, simply because I know that Perlman sometimes, has affiliations with like CHOP, and other hospitals, and sometimes, especially even to the professors or PIs themselves, if it is like a research related position, I know sometimes seems more fluid for them, not a hard line between the research they're doing for Penn and research for doing at CHOP, or even they may have a lab that's located at CHOP. So um, for the most part, it is, but with something like that, and in general with any on campus, we say when in doubt, just double check with us. Especially, I know in Perlman, obviously at Penn in general, there's so many different departments. In the medical school itself as well, there's quite a few. So we can always confirm that. Um, okay. And then where can we find the job position information? I I don't know if you're referring to, Irene, do you
Job
think that's
job
job
postings.
postings?
That's yeah.
So, I know now in Workday, that is where that degree seeking students can they have access to Workday, and there is a specific like student employment job posting area for on campus employment. Um, I know that for non-degree seeking, if we have exchange students that are here, there are certain groups that, are unfortunately not able to access Workday. But for the most part, if you are a degree seeking, student enrolled in a program class here at Penn, for the most part, you should be able to access it. Um, I don't know if do you want to add to that, Irene, or is that covered?
No, I think that's on the
Okay.
mark.
Um, as we said before, for the I-20, um, I usually say, I mean, you can sign it electronically, but it still needs to be printed out. Because again, similar with customs or at the, consulate when you've, obtained a new visa, Social Security is the same. They do not want to see electronic copies of documents. Um, it's something, if you want to do a wet signature, that's fine. But yeah, that is one where you can electronically sign it and then print it out. But I know what matters the most is that SSN letter from ISSS, that has to have the wet signature, which is why that is one of the kind of rare forms where we do ask you to come in to pick it up. It's something that we can't just email you for you to print out.
And all I-20s and all DS 2019s are digitally signed by our office.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Got an on-campus job recently. I've completed all the processing at onboard at Penn. How long will I get any further information about my SSN application? So I'm going to assume that you've already gone in and to the Social Security office and that you've applied. Um, typically, they on their website this morning they had said after attending your appointment or drop in at the Social Security office and they have the documents that they need from you to process it. They said it's usually within a minimum of 14 days they will mail out that Social Security card. I know sometimes it really just depends, sometimes even on regular mail, because it does go through regular mail, which I still don't understand because it's such an important number, but it goes through regular mail. So would say it could take, a couple weeks minimum. Um, if you haven't gone to Social Security yet, and or you're about to, I usually tell students, especially, it depends on the on-campus employer. Sometimes they want to see this, sometimes they don't. Um, and if you've already gone and you don't have this, that's fine. But usually I tell students, when they do go to Social Security to apply, if you remember to ask for a receipt. Social Security will give you a receipt and it's confirmation that you did apply. I think it also is helpful too in the event that, there's a possibility that, the Social Security number may have gotten lost in the mail or whatever the issue is and you have a concern, at least you have that documentation, especially if you are going to be reaching out to Social Security for assistance.
Just also a quick public service announcement about your social security number. Once you do
Yes.
get that number, guard it with your life. That is not a
Yes.
number to be shared with anyone. You're not going to email it. You're not the number to anyone. You're not going to provide that to anyone who should not have that number. It's with you for life too. So once you get your social security number, you don't need another social security number in your lifetime. It's with you for life. But there's a lot of scams that go on with Social Security. Sometimes someone might call you posing that they're from Social Security, and they'll ask for information from you. Do not give it. Social Security will never call you. It's on their website. So again, you really want to guard that number with your life because it's a very important number, and you just don't want to share it with anyone.
And in emails, that even includes, even to a Penn department. And I know most of them, maybe even onboarding as well, we usually have that disclaimer of like, do not email us an attachment of the social. Don't even type it in an email. Um, I'm sure onboarding, if they aren't having you physically come in person, to provide the social to them, they may be doing it on. I know Penn has what's called Secure Share, to share those types of documents. And also, the Social Security card is not one that you need to keep in your wallet and have with you at all times. It is a card that you want to just store away and wherever you keep others' identity sensitive information and documents like passport, things like that. Yeah, it's a card that is very, very important, but not one that you have to have with you at all times. And yeah, essentially we're saying, like, guard it with your life, no big deal. But yeah. Okay. Do I have to get an employment letter or offer first, or get an employment form from ISSS first, or get an SSN first? What is the order? So you do need to have an offer first, and that you have, that employment's been accepted. And then that is when you can work on, the instructions we've talked about, whether it's F or J, the appropriate forms that you need to fill out with ISSS. And then if that includes getting the SSN letter through IPEN, but the very first thing is you need to have a job offer, to do that. And then I think the very last thing, because obviously you're working with ISSS to also, if applicable, get what you need to be able to apply for the social, um, then that's when you apply for the social. So employment offer is first, and then consulting with ISSS, depending on if you're an F or J, what you need to do next, and then getting the SSN. Because as we said before in the presentation, you need to show that you have future or current confirmed employment, when you go to the Social Security office.
And you can request the Social Security letter that ISSS would complete in IPEN. That's an option
Yes.
in your IPEN record.
Yeah. And I can't remember what it's called, the e-form, but I think it's one of those, when you see it, you'll know it.
It
It's
has the
like on
term
campus
social.
employment or
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, okay. If J1 is expired and student got an extension on the same project where they're enrolled, can they renew their visa being in the US without going to go to their home country? I know that as of now, for F and J, both F and J1 visas, it's my understanding that's not something that you can renew yet within the United States. It would be nice down the road, but as of now, that's not an option. Um, typically, we say if, as we said before, you can be in the U.S. while the J or F in your passport is expired. But at all times, the I-20 or DS 2019, with also nuance that we talked about, that needs to be valid at all times. But if you are planning to travel outside the US and at the time of reentry from that trip, your visa will be expired, then you do need to make arrangements to renew that visa at a consulate abroad. Um, yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything else, Irene, to that.
Nope,
Okay.
summed it up nicely.
Okay. I checked the ISSS official website for F1 off-campus CPT. Um, for letter. I don't believe so. I'll have to double check myself. I do know that a big thing or major difference between also with off-campus CPT and on-campus is that the earliest that you can apply for a social security number is um, 30 days prior to the CPT start date. So that is also a big thing that, to keep in mind, because we have had students that have tried to get a social security number, earlier than that, and social security will turn you away without hesitation. But I'm actually going to double check that quick.
And while Madison's looking that up, I'm just going to recap a little bit. Again, any questions about employment or volunteer work, make sure you are reaching out
Yes.
to your ISSS advisor for a consult about that. It might seem very innocent that you're, volunteering, doing something, but it can have severe ramifications on your immigration status. Do not rely on friends. Do not rely on your
Mhm.
academic advisor. They are not experts in immigration. We are. So again, we really plead with you. Any
Yeah.
questions, please reach out to us.
Yeah, and especially with this comes up a lot. There is a difference between, I mean, we won't go into because that's a whole, I feel like a
Yeah.
presentation in itself. But there is a difference but to immigration between volunteering and unpaid employment. There is a significant difference with that. So, and as Irene said, do not rely on, friends. Immigration is very individualized to a specific case, even if your friend seems to have almost identical scenario as you do. And the reason we plead too is obviously so you remain compliant, but we have had scenarios, I have even with my students before, where unfortunately we've had to take measures, and they've been as extreme as closing or terminating a record, and that is not something that we come to lightly. More often than not, it is because it's an immigration regulation. It's not something that we get to decide. It's over our head. And unfortunately, immigration, even if it's, you say, oh, well, a friend told me this, or I had no idea, or whatever it is, unfortunately, more times than not, that's not grounds to prevent the termination. So, as I said before, I feel like the big takeaway too for the employment is ask for permission, not forgiveness, because the forgiveness will not come. So just be aware of that. So I did find the CPT info, and that is correct. You will not need the Social Security letter from ISSS, but you'll need the application, Social Security application, the I-20 that is endorsed for CPT. So, and pretty much that authorizes CPT from ISSS, and then your passport, visa in your passport, and then printout of your I-94. And then I usually say too with the Social Security application, sometimes we will get questions about, how to answer certain questions on the form. I usually say, it is a social security application, so they know it best. I know it comes with really detailed instructions, but also I just say, fill it out as best you can. And then if you have questions, when you go into the Social Security office, they can assist you. But it's not an application that, we oversee. We're just as familiar with it as you are at times. But yeah, they can assist if you have any questions or concerns about it. And let me go back to,
Okay.
do we have
Any other
others?
questions?
Let me see. Oh, okay, cool. I thought those were questions, but I realized comments. You're welcome. Okay.
All right. Well, again, feel free to put in any more questions. We've still got a little time remaining. And
Yeah.
again, just kind of recapping, for on campus employment while school is in session, 20 hours a week maximum. During breaks, holiday breaks, summer breaks, it can be more than 20 hours. Employment authorization and your ability to work on campus corresponds to being a full-time registered student. So even if you have a document that goes well into the future, an I-20, DS 2018, once you graduate and no longer enrolled full-time, then your corresponding employment authorization would also.
I'm gonna take this question.
Okay.
So, so it says, just to clarify, volunteering isn't going through the same process and doesn't need authorization. What I'm going to say with volunteering, because volunteering, I think a lot of the times, how it is seen by others and what the definition is not what Immigration and Department of Labor define volunteering as. So I'm not really going to answer that question. My answer to that is that you need to talk to an ISSS advisor. They will go over, if there is an opportunity that you're seeing and you're trying to determine if it is deemed volunteering or not. We will go over that with you. And then if it is deemed that it is not considered volunteering, but unpaid employment, that is when we're looking at work authorization if applicable. But yeah, that is a definitely not a one size fits all question, not even one that I can even, hypothetically kind of say. You got to talk to an ISSS advisor. And again, appointments, um, drop-in hours. We keep, I say this too, I feel like I'm saying my autopilot speech I give in advising appointments. We keep notes and detailed documentation of any interaction that we have with a student. So, for example, let's say you were talking to your assigned advisor, met with them about a certain subject, but then you later on have follow-up questions, but you want to get an appointment in as quickly as possible, but your advisor's not available. If you're meeting with a different advisor, it won't feel like you're starting over. It is picking up where you left off because that advisor also has access to the notes that were taken from your last appointment and what they had gone over and questions and things like that. We try to make us given, even though like our workload and all that, we try to be as accessible as possible to students. But again, as I said before, you know, more often than not, because we would love to be mind readers, but we're not. We don't know that you have a question, concern, or even job opportunity in question unless you come to us. So we're not going to come to you. You have to come to us and advocate that you need assistance and double checking, whether or not you can do certain activities.
And again, just make sure, there's a distinction between F1s and J1s. J1s have
Yes.
one more step that you have to go through to get on campus authorization from our office. So there is an IPEN, a request for that. So just make sure that you're making distinction whether you're J1 or F1. J1, one extra step.
So to find your assigned ISS advisor, when you log into IPEN, I know sometimes it can take a sec or two for the IPEN homepage to load, but once it loads, it's usually towards the center or bottom of that homepage. It will say, your current ISSS advisor is, and it'll say their name, and then it will say their email address as well. Um, and then just note too with email, we will respond as soon as possible. There is kind of an ebb and flow throughout the year, especially, with having, so many students. But again, that's why I say, it's not just email, drop-ins, appointments, maybe even calling the front desk if you think you have a more general question. Um, yeah. And then two, I will say, because I know this is the first of our fall workshops that we're having. We are going to be having this fall as well. I think the schedule went out last week or the week before. There is going to be a CPT workshop. There's going to be an OPT workshop. I think off campus, maybe in general. So just be on the lookout for that too. Look at that schedule if there's something that you think could be applicable to you in the future. Um, you know, we have these workshops every semester. So if you do have the time, to attend one this semester, definitely do it. Even if, for example, you're graduating in the spring and just want information on OPT to prepare for the springtime, it's never too early to do that as well to kind of, get that information. Um, Am I
Not
allowed
sh
to ask the recruiter on Workday for my submitted application? You should have access to that, like
yeah.
what you submit, because in Workday, um, yeah, it should save that and have that. I would say if you're having issues with seeing, like if let's say you've already tried to obtain this before and you're not seeing it, I would maybe contact the Solution Center through Penn because I know that they oversee Workday. Just to if you're having issues, but that's at least my understanding, even with staff. I don't know if Irene, you know a bit more about
Yeah,
that. That's
that's
my understanding.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, with the Solution Center, I'll say I know that they can be contacted email or phone. I know that again, it's similar to us with, ebb and flow. Sometimes it's just very, very busy for them as well in terms of the school year. But if it's been a little while and you emailed and the ticket has not been acted upon yet or resolved. Again, I know that they have their like hotline there as well that you can call. So I'm sorry if they haven't gotten back to you yet. I would definitely try to follow up if you can. As well as I don't know if maybe they have frequently asked questions, something like that on their website.
Okay, any
All
other
right.
questions?
Yeah, we can stay on for a couple more minutes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we've got
Trying
like
to think.
a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Any other big ticket items that we need to
Yeah.
remind people about?
I'm trying to think of.
When in doubt, ask ISSS.
Yes. Yes. Even if I'll say too, because sometimes this happens, it, even if a hiring department goes, oh yeah, you can do that, or a professor goes, oh no, 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 I've had students before who have,
Don't buy it.
done this without, without issue. Yeah, just, I mean, I guess in the situation, politely just go, okay, but you need to come talk to us.
Yeah, I
So,
think, we're and Madison had mentioned this. We're really doing this to try and protect yourself,
yeah.
you as the student, because, repercussions on unauthorized employment or volunteering in the immigration world can have dire consequences. So it really is so important not to take risks. And if you have a question, ask us.
Yeah, especially with our office. I mean, I think a big difference between us and other offices is yes, while there are some Penn, policies that we follow according to Penn, majority of what our policies are, they are above our head. They are the federal government. Um, but at the same time, we're not here to, stand in the way of an opportunity. I know that you're here for a limited time at Penn. We want you to be able to take advantage of as many opportunities as possible, but it is that balance of making sure that if you are, those opportunities that come up, that they are not going to impact your visa status. Because we see not only as, visa status while you're here and as a student, we also want to set you up long term and making sure that, academically and employment wise, you've done everything by the book, it's in compliance because anything that you've ever done in the United States, both academically and employment wise, is up for scrutiny if or review. If in the future you are, whether it's 10 years from now, going to try to apply for a green card or H-1B, and we've seen it happen where, a student or employee was a student like 5 to 10 years ago, but something that like an internship in question or something like that in their undergrad, USCIS is scrutinizing it and it can impact a future visa status. So just more kind of explaining our intentions and what our goals are. And I tell students sometimes we're not, I know this is not the intelligible way to put it, but we're not the fun police. We don't, we want you to take advantage of opportunities, but just to give you some clarification of, the how and the why, like for us. Um, yeah. Oh, I see we have a question. If someone wants to change the status to another visa like H1 or married to a US citizen, um, what will that candidate do? So for that, I know, so H-1B, that is an employee sponsored visa. So if let's say, there is an employer, whether it's, for after graduation or, while you're on OPT and they want to sponsor you for an H-1B, um, they are who you should initially go to for any questions that you have, because it is an employer sponsored visa. It's not something that ISSS can assist with unless we were, Penn is the employer sponsoring you. Um, and then for both the H-1B and, applying to be, US citizenship or, green card, we always say, when possible to seek legal counsel, immigration legal counsel. If it is something that ever does come up that's relevant, we do have some recommendations we can give for like local immigration law firms. But depending on the scenario, that's really out of our depth. Those two scenarios for green card or H-1B, that's something we could get involved with. Again, if Penn was the employer and Penn was sponsoring those two for employment reasons.
And
Um, yeah.
keep in mind also when if you're applying for a green card and you're on an F or J visa, that can have repercussions on your travel plans because when you're
Yes.
applying for an F visa or a J visa, you have to demonstrate what's called non-immigrant intent, meaning it's not your intention to immigrate to the United States. So by virtue of having a green card pending, you might run the risk of being denied an F or J visa. So again, reach out to us. If you have an immigration attorney, reach out to your immigration attorney who's assisting you on the green card petition. But just be mindful of that.
Yeah, and especially with the green card, and from my own personal experience, it's it's that balancing act of, you also want to make sure, F1 or J1 activities are not, it's that fine line making sure that neither are kind of negatively impacted by each other in terms of the ongoing pending permanent residency application while being in your active visa status. And travel is one of them that, yeah. So again, what Irene said, having immigration counsel, it's one of those things, you can still come and talk to us and ask us. We'll let you know if it's something that we just cannot answer. But again, if it's something that we can't answer, we do our best to, um, you know, it's the, we can't answer, but, here are other resources. And sometimes that is, again, giving immigration law firm recommendations. As well. So we try our best to, if we can't answer it, at least direct you to who can or how to get that information.
Yep. Okay, so we are at the 2 o'clock hour. So I think we haven't been getting more questions. So I think we're going to wrap it up at this point. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Madison.
Thank you, Irene.
And we hope you have a great semester. Things are going well and enjoy your day.
Bye, everyone.